there's no completion. Hello and welcome to the Two Consoles Too Late podcast. I'm the host, Jackson Keebler, and I am Two Consoles Too Late. What does that mean? Well, here at this podcast, we look at the classics and the not-so-classics of retro video gaming, often for the very first time, and with no nostalgia. And here on episode 165, we're looking at a retro video game console that is now 30 years plus since its release. We are looking at the Atari Jaguar, a console that was literally two consoles too late. And we're also going to look at, there's a new Tomb Raider game coming out, so that got the gears grinding here at the podcast. I want to talk a little bit about that. And over on Auction Alert, we're going to see what's out there in retro gaming goodness. We're going to see if there's any Atari Jaguars out there. See what Tomb Raider games are out there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go.
Going long. It is going long. Looking long. Going long. It is going long. Looking long.
All right, so not much has happened with the PS1 long box collection since our last conversation on episode 164. I've acquired nothing. The two games that I did get, the three games, I got a lot of games. It was Criticom, Street Fighter the movie, and some tennis game. Those games finally arrived. And once again, the jewel cases kind of look like dog shit. And I got some quote-unquote unboxing footage, and I was going to do a video, and I just never got around to it. Because I don't chase that algorithm, son. Ain't no money in that YouTube. But I haven't acquired anything. But I did acquire the box and the manual for Kingsfield from the Goodwill of North Georgia. A little story about that. I put in a max bid of $30 on this thing, and it stayed well below the $30 mark. But on the last day of the auction, it shot up, and I went over the price charts to see, what is this worth according to them, and they had the box at $56 and the manual at $40, bringing the total to about $95, which really blew my mind away. I was like, that's a lot. But Price Chart has that game CIB for $134. So I thought, okay, I'll pick up this case and this manual for cheap, and then I'll pick up a loose disc from the eBays and, Frankenstein this thing, and I'll get Kingsfield for cheap. Well, that's just not going to be the case. I won the auction, but I won it at $75. So after shipping, handling, and everything, and tax, it's going to come in, I guess, around $95. So now I have to go over the eBays and pick up a loose disc. But here's a little collector's tip. There's two versions of Kingsfield. One's a jewel case, one's a long box. The long box version of Kingsfield, the font on the disc has like a purple coloring, and the disc for the jewel case is just simply black on silver. So there you go. I learned a little something. And for those who don't know, Kingsfield is an RPG for the PlayStation. Whether it's a good one or not, I'm not sure. I won't know until I play it. So once it's finally acquired, I'll do it over on the live stream every Saturday morning at 7:30 a.m. on Twitch and YouTube. You can check me out live streaming the game from the Longbox Collection. This past live stream, I totally forgot what I played. Need for Speed. That's I had to stop the recording and look at the collection of games, and I couldn't remember. It was Need for Speed. Fun little racing game. I put 40 minutes into that live stream, and I think I kind of fixed my OBS, and I think the problem was my footage was really choppy. I did a live stream of Twilight Princess, and I'm going to talk about that later. But I did a stream of Twilight Princess, and someone left a comment that the footage is ass. That was it. So I replied to the comment, define ass. All right. I mean, I don't mind negative comments. I welcome criticism. That's how people improve. But you need to be a little bit more constructive.
Stick it!
Okay. Footage is ass. Doesn't really tell me a whole lot. What exactly made it ass? This past week, Sony did a state of play, and they announced Tomb Raider: The Legacy of Atlantis. So this came across my feed on YouTube, and so I checked it out. And in this trailer, Lara Croft is still shapely as ever, and she's being chased by dinosaurs. And I was like, that seems familiar. And there's a bit of a cutscene where she's talking to a rather gruff gentleman who puts her in contact with the head of some mysterious corporation. And I thought, this is really familiar. Well, the reason it's familiar is because it looks like they just remade the original Tomb Raider again. So for those who don't know, there's the original Tomb Raider, which came out on PC. Some people say that the first release of Tomb Raider was on the Sega Saturn. I'm not going to get in that argument. For me, I first played it on the PC, and I absolutely love that game. All right? Yes, there is nostalgia for this game, okay? I didn't live under a rock. I mean, just because this podcast, we don't talk about nostalgia. Some games I have played. Anyway, so the original came out on PC, absolutely loved it. But then they released it again and called it Tomb Raider Anniversary. And I picked up a copy of that for the Wii, and I got it from, I think, the Maryland Toy Expo for like $10. And I forget why I picked it up. Oh, you know why? Because they had just released the Nintendo Switch collection, which had games 1, 2, and 3, and they have since released 4, 5, and 6 for the Switch and modern consoles, which made me pick up a copy of Tomb Raider Anniversary for the Wii. So here I am feeling all nostalgic for the Tomb Raider games, and I decided to start playing Tomb Raider Anniversary. Now, originally, I only played that game for maybe an hour and then just put it down. Well, I remember why I only played it for an hour, because those motion controls are awful. And when it comes to motion controls for the Wii, they either really worked or they really didn't. For Metroid Prime Trilogy, they really worked. But for a game like this, not a fan, because you got to like shake the nunchuck to like get enemies off you and shimmy faster and swim faster. Certain puzzles you got to like move, and they show you on screen that you have to like move the nunchuck and the Wii remote in a certain way. And that just sort of bothers me to the point where I think I'm just going to try to pick up Tomb Raider Anniversary for another console. But it got me thinking. So I did a manifesto over at the Patreon at patreon.com/2consoles2late, talking about my nostalgia for the Tomb Raider franchise. And I'm considering doing what I would call the year of Tomb Raider, like I did with Zelda. Just go through all the games chronologically, which is a huge time investment. But it's something on the radar. So for right now, I'm just playing Tomb Raider Anniversary. And it's got me thinking like, I've got this modded PS2. I could just, put it on that, which is a whole other can of worms I just don't want to talk about. So anyway, there's a new Tomb Raider game coming out for modern consoles. It's just a remake of the first, so I guess a new generation is going to be introduced to Lara Croft.
Your system is the most advanced in the universe. Let's review the numbers. Sega Genesis is 16 bits. 3DO is 32 bits. The Atari Jaguar is 64 bits. Which is more advanced? Clifford! With 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar. Which is more advanced? Clifford!
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!
All right, that was the somewhat famous commercial for the Atari Jaguar with the slogan, "Do the math." Because when Atari 30 years ago marketed this console, that was their slogan, "Do the math," because this console was 64 bits. And whether it was actually 64 bits, I'm not an engineer. It was, but it wasn't, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what you had was 64 bits, a rather divisive controller that I've talked about before, and 4 games at launch that weren't very good. Tempest 2000, Cybermorph, Trevor McFur, Evolution Dino Dudes, and Raiden. Yes, I know that's 5, but it's just the Atari Jaguar, I wouldn't say it was a catastrophe, but it was sort of Atari's swan song. So today we're diving into what the Jaguar was, why collectors still have a special place for it, what games are actually worth playing today, and whether buying an Atari Jaguar in 2026 makes any sense.
This is a paid program for the Atari Jaguar.
Every great story has a great beginning. And this story, our story, begins with this. The Atari Jaguar system and a guy named Bob. Right now, Bob's waiting for his girlfriend to show up so they can go out and get something to eat. He's got the old 16-bit video system popped in. He's playing his little heart out. You gotta love him. Tonight, I'm gonna show him something that'll send him racing up one side of Nirvana and back down the slopes of Shangri-La. Okay, so I won't promise, but it will slap him around a little and wake up his dull little life. Watch and learn.
So by the early 1990s, Atari was no longer the unstoppable force that it had been during its glory days of the Atari 2600. Now were the days of Nintendo, now were the days of Sega, now were the days of, even the TurboGrafx 16. And this is like 1993, so Sony's now lurking in the shadows with the PlayStation, and Atari still wants to kind of have a dog in the fight. And they're trying to convince everyone that they still mattered. So they started working on a 32-bit console called the Panther. But they canceled that, and they threw all their eggs in the Jaguar basket. The Jaguar was released in 1994, and it was marketed as the first 64-bit console. Now, was it 64 bits? Well,
looking for video games at a higher level? At only 16 bits, you'll find Nintendo and Sega. No? Then let's go where no one's ever been before. Jaguar by Atari. The only video game system with 64 bits of mega power. For 64 bits of awesome moves, mind-blowing graphics, and total control. Get bit by Jaguar.
the system did have multiple processors. There was a graphics chip and there was a sound chip. And these custom chips were fondly called Tom and Jerry. Now, when I first acquired the Atari Jaguar collection, I joined some Facebook groups to, get this thing sold and get it in front of, some people who would actually appreciate it. And a lot of these Facebook groups, they have some questions to make sure that you're not a bot and whatnot. And one of the questions was, what are the name of the two chips in the Atari Jaguar? And I had no idea because I hadn't really done my research up until this point. I didn't really know much about the Jaguar. So I think I answered that the two chips were named Beavis and Butthead, which was wrong. It's Tom and Jerry.
This part of the brain controls the subject's emotions.
Hey, get off my lawn!
This part controls hunger.
Hey, you gonna eat that?
This controls sexual impulses. This controls rational thought.
Why would I buy a 32-bit system for $300 when I can get a 64-bit Jaguar system for $149?
Atari Jaguar 64-bit, $149.
Knock it off!
But unfortunately, early on, developers struggled to use the hardware efficiently. Atari's development tools were rather rough. Documentation was pretty much incomplete, and many studios just simply gave up on trying to make games for the Atari Jaguar. And if they did, all they did was just simply port 16-bit games over. And we're going to look at a couple of those. Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure is a fine example of one of those games. Which is unfortunate because, the Atari Jaguar actually had some potential. And when developers did figure out how to make games for it, you got some good games. You got games like Tempest 2000, Alien vs. Predator, Doom, and Wolfenstein 3D. Those 4 games I would consider, I guess, the Mount Rushmore for the Atari Jaguar. And those games showed some flashes of brilliance. The problem is just there weren't enough of those kind of games.
1 million years, the cranium of Australopithecus increased by nearly 20%, causing this species to display a dramatic leap in rational thought.
You mean you want me to pay $300 for a 32-bit system when I could get a 64-bit Jaguar for $149? What do I look like, a moron?
Atari Jaguar, 64-bit, $149.
So the launch of the Atari Jaguar is a bit of a disaster. The Atari Jaguar launches to limited markets in New York and San Francisco in 1993 before a wider rollout in 1994. And Atari reportedly sold through its initial launch stock, which sounds promising. Now, the figure that I saw is that they sold 17,000 units to those limited audiences in New York and San Francisco. Now, there was an internal document at Atari that I think the goal was something like 25,000 to 50,000. Don't quote me. I think I saw that on a YouTube video. And we all know if it's on YouTube, it's real, right? But the reality was starting to set in for Atari here. And the launch lineup was really weak. And when you launch a console with bad games, you're just not going to have a good launch. Once again, those launch games are Cybermorph, which is the packing game. It's these weird polygons. It's a space shooter sort of thing. And you got this talking head telling you that you don't know how to fly. Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy. It's a shooter, but it's not a very good shooter. Raiden was way better. And then you have Evolution Dino Dudes. I didn't play that one. That one apparently is a puzzle game. Graphically looks very strange. But meanwhile, in the other core of the universe, Sega had the Sega Genesis, Nintendo had the SNES. That thing was going like gangbusters. And Sony was, they were preparing to release the PlayStation, as well as Sega was also preparing to release the Sega Saturn. So Atari suddenly looks completely outmatched, and a $250 console at launch gets reduced down to $150 and is now being sold on an infomercial. And if you bought it from the infomercial, you got a second controller for free.
Well, a while ago, come on. You know you want the Atari Jaguar, and all you have to do is pick up the phone.
Get ready to discover the next generation of video games. Everything else is history. It's the Atari Jaguar 64-bit system, the most fun you can get your hands on today, at the best price anywhere. And once you experience the power of the Jaguar, you'll know in a cybersecond it's a whole new game. The Jaguar is 64 bits of raw power, awesome 3D graphics, CD quality stereo sound, 16.8 million colors. Plus, the Jaguar games are so intense because the Jaguar system delivers real-world, real-time gameplay. You can jam with a whole slew of top-of-the-line cutting-edge games, like Wolfenstein 3D, Mayhem and Madness Jaguar style, in a virtual war zone, Super Burnout, open the throttle and take the ride of your life, Ultra Vortex, where the fate of mankind is in your hands, Doom, blast the nasties and do whatever you can to ensure you live to fight another day. And the excitement never ends. The Atari Jaguar was designed to be modular, so you can add peripherals to further enhance your gameplay. Call now and you'll get the complete system, including the 17-button ergonomically designed controller, for just $159. Through this special TV offer, you also get a free second controller, so you can go one-on-one with a friend. It's a $24.95 value. And listen to this. If you call right now, we'll give you your first game free. You'll pilot the Cybermorph, an attack craft that changes shape to fit the environment, face Demon Head, probe interplanetary battlefields, and clear enemy bunkers. Do the math and you'll see the Atari Jaguar 64-bit system is for you. Don't wait. Call now and you'll receive the complete Jaguar system, 2 controllers, and your first game Cybermorph, all for just $159 plus shipping and handling. Have your credit card ready and call the number you see on your screen. Or send check or money order to the address below. Christmas delivery is guaranteed if you call right now. Try the Jaguar for 30 days risk-free. If it's not the most fun you've ever had, return it for a full refund of your purchase price. Get ready to be blown away by the Atari Jaguar.
And for those who don't know, that little transition noise, that is the startup sound of the Atari Jaguar. And to have a 32-bit sound chip and that's your startup sound, come on, you can do better than that. Anyway, back to the show. So what we just heard was a rather lengthy outtake from an infomercial done by Atari to sell the Atari Jaguar. And I have to say, if you want some, mid-90s comedy, check out, I'll put a link in the show notes to this infomercial. It's pretty cheesy. But, so the Atari Jaguar, I think we all know it fails, doesn't do very well. And Atari goes the way of the dodo bird. Serious reductions. It gets to the point where it's just like a staff of 1 and a desk, and Atari gets acquired by Hasbro. But there are games worth playing for the Atari Jaguar, and there's games for all types of genres. So I think the Atari Jaguar gets overlooked. So I went through the rather limited library of games for the Atari Jaguar. Now, there's not that many games for the Atari Jaguar. I don't know what the official number is. I've seen something where it's like 56 cartridges and like 13 Jaguar CD games. Every website and YouTube video I came across, there was a different number. So we'll just put it in the region of about 50, okay? Like 50 cartridges and, once again, maybe 13 Sega CD games. Anyway, let's talk about those games.
I must warn you about Jaguar, a new video game system too powerful for home use. Unlike Nintendo and Sega with only 16 bits of power, Jaguar by Atari gives you 64 bits of mega power. Clear the room and I'll be back for adults only. Are we alone? Look! Jaguar by Atari is the only video game system with 64 bits of awesome power! This irresponsible action... into the living rooms of our young people!
Get bit by Jaguar!
If you want to have a successful video game console, you have to have good games. All right? Because you're going to lose money on the hardware and you're going to make it on the software. But if nobody's buying your games, well, then your console is going to fail. And that's what happened with the Atari Jaguar. But at the end of the day, when it comes to getting a console in 2026 or 1994, it all comes down to the games, right? Because you're not surfing the internet with these things. So let's look at those games in no particular order. The Atari Jaguar covered multiple genres, but missed out on a few. So first off, we have platformers. There's a couple for the Atari Jaguar. You got Bubsy, didn't play it. Rayman, played it very briefly. And Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure, a game we talked about here on the podcast. I'm curious to play Rayman, don't really care about Bubsy, and Pitfall: The Mayan Adventure, you can hear all about that. I forget which episode that is. But those are some cases where some 16-bit games got ported over to the Jaguar, and that was it. If you're into puzzle games, definitely had a couple of those. The big one here at Two Consoles Too Late was Zoop. But I'm going to throw in Myst. I think Myst is a puzzle game. It's a 3D adventure game, sort of, but there's not much of an adventure because there's no enemies. So I just consider that a puzzle game. And apparently Dino Dudes was a puzzle game as well. But where the Atari Jaguar really shines is first-person shooters. You got Wolfenstein 3D, you got Doom, you got Alien vs. Predator. And once again, I think those three games are part of the Mount Rushmore of the Atari Jaguar. Those games ran real smooth on the Atari Jaguar. I was super impressed. I mean, I don't really have a lot of memory of playing it on the PC, but it was really hard to tell that I was not playing that on a PC. So that's where the Atari Jaguar, almost caught a little bit of fire. Sports games, not so much. there's no Maddens and whatnot. At the time, the Panasonic 3DO is coming out, and that's, Trip Hawkins and Electronic Arts. So you're not going to get a lot of sports titles here on the Atari Jaguar. Racing games, didn't really play them, just played them briefly. Super Burnout, it's a little bit like MotoGP. It's a motorcycle racing game. And World Tour Racing. Can't really talk about that one. But you did have some racing game options. And also you had Checkered Flag, which I don't think was very good. Fighting games, yes. You definitely had some fighting games on the Atari Jaguar. And I think the two standouts are Primal Rage and Kasume Ninja. Primal Rage was, I think it was a cartridge and a CD game, and the CD version is $700. And yes, you did have some shooters, not shmups. I guess the notable one is Raiden and Trevor McFur. The PlayStation wasn't quite out yet, so you couldn't play the Raiden project. I forget when that game was released. But if I'm going to play a shooter, I'm going to play Raiden before I play Trevor McFur. That's just easiest choice I could ever make. But there were no RPGs for the Atari Jaguar. I don't think having an RPG would have helped, but it would have been nice to have the option. One game that I was thinking that the Atari Jaguar didn't get that I thought would be perfect, and this is just my own 2 cents here at Two Consoles. SimCity, I thought would have been a really good game to get on the Atari Jaguar, but they didn't get SimCity. Instead, they got Theme Park.
Introducing Alien vs. Predator for the 64-bit Atari Jaguar. You might not want to play it alone.
Ah! Mom.
The Atari Jaguar does have a bit of a homebrew community, although I don't think it is as big as something like the Sega Dreamcast homebrew community or indie development, whatnot. But some homebrew games were made for the Atari Jaguar. And once again, no particular order. These are some games I found on a video on the YouTubes. First off, we're going to start off with Battlesphere. It's a rather popular one. It's a space flight sim. Can't really talk about it. I just went over to the eBay just to see how much a copy was. And copies of Battlesphere go from $400 to $1,000. That is a lot of money to spend on a homebrew game. I think, I realize that, it's an independent project done for very little profit, but that's a bit much. And I'm not sure how much of that is scalpers and resellers and whatnot. So anyway, that's one game. Another game. So the developer of Alien vs. Predator was Rebellion. Well, they made a wonderful space flight sim for the Atari Jaguar called Skyhammer. Now, once again, is this homebrew? I don't know. The definition gets a little murky. But anyway, this game Skyhammer looked really good. Kind of wish I could get my hands on that one. If you head on over the eBays, a cartridge of Skyhammer is $200. And here's a name I think that most people would know. It's right down the street on 95. Bethesda. Yes, Bethesda, the makers of Elder Scrolls and Fallout. They released a game for the Atari Jaguar called Protector. And it's a horizontal shooter. It looks a lot like Defender. Graphically, it looks wonderful. Once again, didn't get my hands on it. Didn't look up the eBay price on that one. But there is a homebrew community, for the Atari Jaguar. Once again, it's rather small and it's sort of limited and disparate. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe I just, I didn't dig deep enough. Maybe there's a whole homebrew community that I'm just not finding. But I'd be curious to, see what was possible for the Atari Jaguar. And I think the only people that could do that is the homebrew community. So Atari decides, you know what? We're just real gluttons for punishment. We're not only going to release a really bad console with really shitty games, we're also going to make a CD attachment for it. And we're only going to make 13 games for it. And it's going to be this big thing that goes on top of the console. I don't think it's ugly. Some people think it's ugly. And I've heard other YouTubers compare it to certain plumbing appliances found in one's household. I can see where that comparison can be made, but I don't think it's that ugly. Anyway, so Atari makes the Jaguar CD. And unfortunately, they only make 13 games for it. And this is at a time when a lot of console manufacturers were coming out with CD consoles. You had the Neo Geo CD, Sega CD, TurboGrafx CD, and even the Amiga had a CD console. So everyone was kind of moving away from the cartridges and towards CD-ROM based games. Why? Because it's cheaper. It's just good business sense. But it was just too late for Atari. That was just not enough to save the Atari Jaguar. And the rest is history. Hasbro ends up buying Atari, and they actually ended up releasing all the information for the Jaguar to developers because I think they thought it was pretty much worth nothing. The Jaguar fails commercially, and most estimates put sales somewhere around 150,000 to 250,000 units total. Once again, don't quote me. All right, so here we are at the end. We have to ask the question, should you get an Atari Jaguar? I don't know. Don't ask me. But if you listen to this podcast, you know I do love my underdogs. And the Atari Jaguar is definitely an underdog. But I do not collect cartridge-based consoles. Never have, never will. I don't have a Nintendo. I don't have a Sega Genesis. I don't have an SNES. I don't have an N64. I don't want those. I don't have space for them. I don't have room for the cartridges. And at the end of the day, I just want to emulate. But I have featured games that have been ported to the Jaguar, like Zoop, like Pitfall, like Flashback. I liked playing Doom. I liked playing Wolfenstein. I think those two games ported to the Jaguar were really good and really showed the potential of the Jaguar. But at this point, I just want to get this thing out of my house. And I'm jokingly, saying, hey, hint, hint, if you want one of these things, I got it. But I have a very large collection that, the seller just doesn't want the whole thing separated. They want it all gone in one shot. But there are mod cons for the Jaguar. All right. There's something called the Jag 2 CD attachment, so you can hook it up to S-Video and HDMI. So if you're looking for, a hookup to a modern TV, that's possible. There is a cartridge where you can put in a mini SD card, and you can play the games off an SD card. So rather than spend a lot of money on these games, which are rather expensive, you can just play them off an SD card, which brings that, that barrier, especially the cost barrier, down. Is it the best retro gaming experience for your money? Absolutely not. The game library just wasn't there. And like I said, this was Atari's just Hail Mary. And unfortunately, they just, if you don't have the games, your console's just not going to make it. And they learned that the hard way. But I like the history of it. And I like video game history. Atari was swinging for the fences one last time. They missed. They rather badly. But you know what? At least they swung. So I think that's the big lesson here. All right. Let's do some auction alert.
Auction alert.
All right, so if you head on over to the Shop Goodwills and you do a search for the Atari Jaguar, nothing comes up. Because they're few and they're far between. It's not like every week, there's another Atari Jaguar. But I would say maybe like once a month I see an Atari Jaguar on the Shop Goodwills. And they always sell. So I had to look at the sold listings, and an Atari Jaguar came from the Goodwill of North Florida. Came with one controller and 2 games. The 2 games were Cybermorph and Syndicate. Syndicate was a game I thought that I would really like because it's sort of cyberpunky dystopian. But that was not the case. It was sort of point and clicky RTS-y. Those are my adjectives. That's the best I can do. But this Atari Jaguar with 2 games sold for $501, and it got 26 bits. Since we talked about Tomb Raider, I bookmarked some listings real fast. You know, nothing super important. Tomb Raider: The Last Revelation. It's going with a lot of games coming from the Goodwill of Colorado. No bids, $10. Tomb Raider: Greatest Hits. Without the manual, coming from the Goodwill Keystone area, so that's across the Mason-Dixon from me. This is great. Current price, $25.99 with no bids. Gee, I don't know what you're smoking up there in Harrisburg, but you better stop because you're never going to get $26 for that. Come on now. All right, and from the Goodwill Industries of Northeast Texas, we got Tomb Raider 3 loose disc for $17.99. Their wacky tobacco in Texas is not as strong as whatever they're smoking up in PA. So, yes, Tomb Raider games can be had. But there's a copy of A-Train. A-Train is a long box game, and that's coming right up the street on right up 95 from the Goodwill Industries of Delaware. It's CIB. A-Train is a little bit like SimCity. I think I've said it before that I really want to get into this game, but I want a mouse for the PlayStation, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to repeat myself, but this copy has the SimCity card game booster pack in the game. It came with the game, and it looks like the cards are sealed. So, of course, I was like, well, okay, I got a bid on this, just to have those, the SimCity card game, I mean, and they're possibly sealed, heck yeah. That and the manual I have for A-Train smells like mothballs. I mean, it's not overpowering, but it's pretty stinky. So when I took that game out of its retro video game protector that I got from retroprotection.com, when I took the game out, there was a bit of an odor, all right, but it's not like filling my kitchen. So anyway, I put a bid on this copy of A-Train simply because it had those cards. That was it. So my max bid is at $100, and right now with 6 days and 12 hours left on the auction, it's up to $70.69. I forget what Price Chart. I think Price Chart has it right there, but I think the value is going to go up because of those cards. We'll see. So the housekeeping portion of the podcast, I think I'm going to call it kitty lunchtime. And the reason is because whenever I get to this portion of the podcast, it's when the cats decide to wake up and hang out and eat and jingle their little collars. So I think I'm going to just the housekeeping portion of the podcast is now going to become kitty lunchtime. I think that's a fun name. Anyway, housekeeping. What am I doing? What am I buying? What am I playing? What am I selling? Last week I kept playing Fatal Frame, and I got as far as the 3rd day, the Calamity, and it was just more of the same. Unlock this, go here, do that, and along the way capture some ghosts, and upgrade your camera. And I only got 1 shard of mirror, so I didn't really, I wasn't really invested in the story. I really liked that game, though, for the atmosphere. It definitely freaked me out. So that one definitely gets a thumbs up here at the podcast. I'd be very curious to play Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly. But I think I'm going to hold off that one for the spooky season in October. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to finish Twilight Princess. And I finally put the kibosh on that. Got all the hearts. I skipped the whole bug quest with Agatha, but I finished it for the GameCube. Still, hands down, the best Zelda game ever. Breath of the Wild notwithstanding. I mean, why is it $200 on the GameCube? You know, rarity, whatnot. I don't know, but I am in the process of making a little humorous video about that. And so that's what I was playing, and I just picked up Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is a remake of the original, which is kind of making me want to go back and play the original, which is kind of making me think I should just do this right and play all the games chronologically, which is kind of making me think that maybe I'm overthinking it. Anyway, so what am I buying? Here's a funny story. Last week for S&Gs, I decided to go to the North Point flea market because my son went to his grandmother's, and he hates going to the flea market. So I get there around, got there late as far as flea markets go. I got there like 11:30, something like that. And I'm only looking for speaker wire and a power brick for the Nintendo Wii. That's it. That's my goals at the flea market. I wasn't looking for games. I wasn't looking for consoles. So this one guy working out of a box truck, he's got bins of shit everywhere, and nothing's organized. So I start digging through one said bin of shit that seemed to have some wires, and I came across a Nintendo Power Brick. And I dug a little bit deeper. Should have wore gloves. God knows what disgusting disease I have now. And I found the console. So I asked the guy, "Hey, how much for?" I hold up the Power Brick and the console. I say, "How much for these?" And I think English was not his first language, and he had to refer to his wife. And then he informed me that it was $35 for the console and the Power Brick. To which I said, "No, thank you, because that is just simply ridiculous." So I said, "How much for the just the Power Brick?" And he informed me that it was going to be $15. And to that I said, "Stick it!" And to that he got rather indignant. And I kind of wish I was rolling camera on that one. So I offered him $5 cash, cold hard cash, but I guess he just didn't want it. So alas, I did not pick up the Power Brick, and I did not find any speaker wire, but there was a lady there, and she was talking to her kid, and she turned around and she screamed, she goes, "Jackson!" And I just turned around immediately. I was like, "Yeah." Like, "What do you want, lady?" She's like, "Oh, no, that's my son." So we had a good laugh about that. But funny little story down at the flea market. All right, thank you for listening to the podcast. I have been the host, Jackson Keebler. You can check me out on the interwebs. Go into Google and type in 2 consoles too late, and there I will be. I recently did a vanity search, and my YouTube came up, my Facebook came up, the podcast came up, of course. So I'm not lying when I say that. It's just me. Unless you know another Jackson Keebler with another retro video game podcast. Shameless self-promotion, check out the Patreon, patreon.com. If you support the podcast monetarily, send you all the goodies, including the postcards and the Miracle of Safe States magnet, and shout-outs on the airwaves. But everything over there is free. You can check out the bonus podcast of Going Long, and I just did a typewriter manifesto about Tomb Raider. All right, I'm starting to lose my voice. I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna go play some Tomb Raider Anniversary and get really frustrated with motion controls. But as always, have a good one. I love you, and goodbye. So the Jaguar, what the fuck? Welcome to the kitty lunch hour. Welcome to the kitty lunch hour.